It's my DraftKings hockey picks for Wednesday, February 26th, and we're starting right now. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Holkamaniacs YouTube channel. If this is your first time here and you want to become a more profitable DraftKings player, start now by subscribing to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. And if you do want in that drawing for 20 DK bucks that I do each and every week, make sure you drop into the comments your favorite stack for today's 3-game slate. Holkamaniacs, about last night, I definitely wanted to tweak this section a little bit to make it a little bit more intuitive, go over some of my results, but also kind of highlight some people in the community that are just doing extremely well. And I did think that the best way to do that would be just to create a DraftKings league. So we did do that. If you want the link for the DraftKings league, definitely jump in the Discord. And we did make it 20 people, and it filled in like an hour. So we're going to have to make it a lot bigger on the next one. But it was an interesting slate yesterday, 13 games overall, which we talked about on Twitch. But I did just bubble this thing, which is unfortunate, right? So only 3 people were paid out of 20. We can tweak this as we go. Also, I had a little bit of a different approach yesterday. I rolled this out in most of my 3-man contests and swept most of them. So it was a profitable night overall. What you'll notice right away about my team is I didn't have a ton of correlation. I actually think this is a viable route on these extremely large slates, right? So when there's a lot of stacking going on and there's things that we can do to try and be a little bit different, I just wanted to jam in a lot of peripherals in this slate and get access to a lot of the studs kind of indirectly. At least that was my strategy here. So you'll see guys like Tyler Ennis. We get him on the first line with Connor McDavid. Maybe I didn't want to pay all the way up for Connor McDavid. So you get the goal from Tyler Ennis. He did have 4 shots on goal and an assist. What a debut for him at 15% in the Holkamaniacs community league here. That was a nice thing to see. And I actually ended up playing a couple cheaper guys from the Nashville Predators. Obviously, that massive total against Ottawa. So Craig Smith, Rocco Grimaldi. Craig Smith gets 4 shots. Love to see that. Rocco Grimaldi was just kind of another cheap play that got me there, or got me to the roster construction I wanted to get to. And I will say that just really prioritizing a guy like Roman Josi, who, didn't even get a point in this game, but still got the block shot bonus. You obviously would like a little bit more from him at that salary. John Carlson indirectly kind of get me access to Alexander Ovechkin. Unfortunately, he didn't get an assist on Ovi's goal last night, but again, the peripherals were very solid there. And Shea Weber, so he's someone that I think can hit that block bonus in any given night, but also provide us with a lot of upside. I just thought he was pretty underpriced in this spot. Maybe people are still a little bit spooked on that injury that he's still coming back from. So jammed in all the defensemen outside of Brent Burns last night. So it ended up working out. Just a couple kind of high volume shooters at the center position. This is a cash build for me. Typically, I would like to have a little bit more correlation, but I just couldn't get comfortable in roster construction yesterday. I'm glad that it ended up working out. I want to shout out a couple people here. Heels fan, 14.6 points, really solid team overall. But let's talk about the top 2. DB Cornett, someone that's been helping out with our Spotify playlist over on Twitch. It's been a lot of fun to get to know Cornett a little bit over the last couple weeks. And he went with kind of a New York Islanders stack. So Barzal, Eberle, Lee, and Devin Taves, which is kind of a full power play stack there. So I love to see that. He went kind of a different route with AA for his value play with McDavid, so I like that quite a bit as well, who did score and get an assist as well. So what a probably the fastest line in the NHL, honestly, with Connor McDavid now, so super interesting. He went Boone Jenner as well, just a really solid value at that price point, even in a tough matchup. I think at the center position that was a little bit thin in the mid-range. I definitely thought Boone Jenner made a ton of sense. He got his access to Nashville with Matthias Ekholm, which was super interesting. Taylor Hall, another guy that was just super underpriced yesterday, just 5,800 for that type of shooting volume. Only 3 shots and a block shot, but I think the process was really good there. First place in the Holkamania contest yesterday, Holes Mia, 140.8. That's a massive score yesterday for one that was actually really low scoring overall. He did end up playing Brent Burns, who did get that shot block bonus, and Roman Josi, all the high dollar defensemen. Interesting. He kind of got there based on Khudobin as well. So Dallas goaltender is something we've talked about a lot on this channel. So I like that quite a bit. But the difference was clearly the St. Louis Blues, Robert Thomas kind of one-off they ended up having here. So he also had an Islanders stack. Thought that was really sharp. Kiefer Sherwood, really just kind of a value play there at winger. Love the idea of paying down at winger. Great job, Hells Me. I think this is an awesome team. But let's move on to today's 3-game slate. Wanted to make sure I got a video out for you guys. Still trying to tweak my plans of I'm going to go to the Fantasy Hockey World Championships in Nashville this coming week. We'll see. It's a little bit last minute, but I'll see if I can make it work. Let's try and break this slate down as quickly as possible with this data sheet. This is available to all my Twitch subscribers in the Discord, of course. It's really trying to get an idea of what type of stacking targets we should have today, even on a small slate. Definitely think it's an interesting one overall as I was kind of breaking this thing down. What stands out right away is that there's really not a high-paced game on this slate. So there could be some scoring overall, but in terms of really fully game stacking one up, I'm a little bit conflicted at this moment. So in terms of the Vegas lines, pretty obvious that Vegas does have the highest total overall here. Pittsburgh, 3.8 is a really high total on the road, and then Colorado against Buffalo. So let's take this game by game today. And I do think that if we were to just start at the top with Pittsburgh and LA, I think it's a really interesting spot, right? So Pittsburgh is on the road, of course. They're a team that actually hasn't been providing a ton of Corsi for over the past month or so, and it's been kind of a middle-of-the-pack, high-danger team. They have been really strong on the power play, or at least above average, but LA has been a pretty disciplined team overall, and it's a mostly neutral matchup. A lot of people think of LA as a kind of a tougher matchup overall in terms of their defensive, just kind of packing things in around the net, but I'm not really super scared of this spot for Pittsburgh. Definitely think that they're squarely in play. I don't know if there's anything that like stands out as it being like the core play tonight. So I don't know if I'd be stacking Pittsburgh up completely today. I think that it's a viable strategy, but the game that I really like is this Vegas and Edmonton game. I think that it's a really interesting spot for Vegas at home. Obviously, this high total, it's not going to be super contrarian, but a team that provides a lot of Corsi for over the last 10, but they also provide a below average amount of low danger and an above average amount of high danger chances. So we want to stack up those high danger chances and really try and project where the explosion could be coming from. And I like this spot against Edmonton because in particular, they're giving up a lot of Corsi over the last 25 games. I would say that it's a slightly below average matchup in terms of the type of Corsi they're allowing, so a little bit less high danger than I would like to see here. But in terms of just looking at teams that allow a lot, Edmonton, highest Corsi against on the slate. So I do think that this matchup for Vegas sets up really well for the way that they like to attack, and they're a team that's been drawing a ton of penalties. So Edmonton has been playing really well in the penalty kill, but I still think that this is a spot where we could get some spots on the man advantage for Vegas. They only had one power play in the last game. I would expect that to change in this spot, especially at home. So I like that quite a bit. The other side of this game, Edmonton's interesting, right? So this really low total, there's going to be some cheaper options again with McDavid, like we talked about on the last slate. So I definitely think that some one-offs, just kind of going a little bit cheaper at the winger position would make some sense. Vegas is a team that hasn't been very strong on the power play in terms of a team that we could be targeting. That one stands out quite a bit. So maybe if you were to stack up Edmonton, maybe going with the power play stack as well would make some sense in tournaments. Even with that low total on the road, definitely think there's a ton of upside here. They're a team that has allowed not a ton of Corsi overall. In fact, that's a really low number over the last 25, not even 50 Corsi, but a high percentage of high danger, at least above average. This is a slate, again, we said there wasn't a lot of high-paced games, but really middle of the pack in terms of these defenses. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic overall. Sometimes you just need to place your bet on good players. Definitely think that the Edmonton stack in tournaments has some appeal. I actually have a lot of interest in Colorado in this last game against Buffalo. Unsurprisingly, they do have the second highest implied team total. The one thing that scares me, and we've talked about this a lot, so I actually dug into it a little bit deeper this morning, which we'll get to in the player portion, but they're just not generating a lot of high danger chances. That's a decent Corsi number, but this scares me a little bit in terms of the upside. The good news is the two players that actually have been providing a lot of high danger for this team, Nathan MacKinnon and Gabriel Landeskog, some of the guys you would be on anyway if you were stacking up Colorado. So that actually helps them a little bit overall, in my mind at least. They're a team that's been drawing some penalties, hasn't had a great last 10 games on the power play, but it could be a decent get-right spot against Buffalo, who does provide at least a slightly above average amount of high danger in terms of matchups. So if I was to really kind of key into a couple key spots today, I'm pretty in line with Vegas overall in terms of my stacking. So I would be on the Golden Knights and the Avalanche. But if you want to get a little bit contrarian, I think there's a little bit of upside here for an Edmonton power play stack. All right, let's walk through some of the picks, starting at the center position. Unsurprisingly, if we're on Colorado today, Nathan MacKinnon, you're going to have to pay that premium, $8,100 on DraftKings, $8,500 on FanDuel. But I do think that these type of peripherals are something that I'm willing to pay up for in almost any slate in any matchup. But 99th percentile Shot prediction for Nathan MacKinnon, 99th percentile shots plus blocks. This is over the last 15 days. 98th percentile Corsi. So a couple of things that we haven't mentioned that we usually talk about is for offensive stats, we really want to focus on things in a shorter time frame, a more recent time frames, because things can always change about how power plays are set up, also how lines are playing, chemistry, that sort of thing, especially around the trade deadline. I want to kind of skew towards some more shorter term stats or more recent stats for that. For the defensive side of things, I'm more apt to kind of skew towards even season long or last 25 games or so to really kind of get an idea of how that defensive team is playing as a whole. We kind of know what these teams are at this point. So I think at that point, we really can focus on those type of metrics. So Corsi 4 is something that's really important at the center position. We always like to mention that as well. 98th percentile for MacKinnon there. 98th percentile in power play shots over the last 15 days as well. And I do think that he's a guy that has as much ceiling as anyone on the entire slate. Unsurprisingly, the one thing that I did like is that in terms of this high danger chances for, it's a really low number, 15.3% as a team, but I did kind of dig into it a little bit. At least MacKinnon and Landeskog, to kind of a different degree, have been providing those high danger chances. So yes, it is a small number as a team, but I'm not super worried about it in terms of MacKinnon. So yeah, only Landeskog has generated more individual high danger chances for over the last 10 for Colorado. William Karlsson is the other center that I'm on today. I think it's a really interesting kind of dynamic here. He's 5K on DraftKings, 6K on FanDuel, but his price actually went down $500 coming off of a hat trick at Anaheim in his last game. So kind of interesting there. I think that it doesn't really necessarily feel point chasey to me, just because I think the price point is very solid. Obviously, a really high total there for Vegas today. He's a 94th percentile Corsi 4 skater over the last 15 days. Again, one of the things we're definitely targeting at the center position each and every day. 86th percentile shot prediction, reasonable for a 5K centerman, and he does have an 82nd percentile shots plus blocks. So not elite by any means, but I think you're going to have to try and find some guys in the mid-range to attack today, and Karlsson's one that I would certainly be considering. Versus Edmonton, they do have the lowest Corsi against on the slate over the last 25, but on this slate, they have the highest high danger percentage against. So I definitely think that Vegas is going to be kind of part of my core today, and William Karlsson is a really nice price point. At the winger positions, we talked a little bit about some of the trades in Edmonton, but let's start with Gabriel Landeskog for Colorado. 5,800 on DraftKings, 6,500 on FanDuel. This gets a price that really kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit. I think in this spot, 90th percentile power play shots over the last 15 days, someone that's being highlighted in kind of the more important ice time that any player can get. Definitely think that 90th percentile shots plus blocks over the last 15 days. Neither of these are elite by any means, but I think at that price point, obviously you get correlation with MacKinnon in that first power play unit. 89th percentile shot prediction. I think this is more of an efficiency play, but definitely one with upside here. Does have an 89th percentile time on ice over the last 15 days, but like I said, top 5 NHL skater in individual high danger chances for over the last 25 games. That's over 2 high danger chances per game. So if we're really trying to target some upside here and a potential goal scorer, I think that Landeskog definitely is one of the best bets on the entire slate to score tonight. We want to talk about getting a little bit of a value. That's really what I'm trying to do at the winger position, because they can't get you that shot block bonus as frequently as a center or a defenseman will typically. So Tyler Ennis, still 3,700 on DraftKings, 4,400 on FanDuel after this trade to Edmonton. Obviously, he's a lot bigger piece of the DFS landscape. His price really isn't kind of reflecting that yet. 88th percentile shot prediction, 86th percentile Corsi 4 over those last 15 days. And he did have 1, 1, and 2. Obviously, AA did as well on this same line. And I think that it's an interesting debut, but anytime you're just going to get a value winger skating with Connor McDavid, I'm going to have a ton of interest here. I think it's a great way to pay down. For a 3-game slate, I actually think the defense position is really interesting today. So we're going to start with Shea Theodore for the Vegas Golden Knights. Obviously, there's been some trades, some movement overall, but I think that this could be a constant for Vegas. 5,800 on DraftKings, 5,700 on FanDuel with pretty elite peripheral stats, guys. 99th percentile Corsi 4, 96th in power play shots. So I think there's a decent amount of upside here overall that you'll get from this defensive play. 94th percentile shots plus blocks. So still getting that peripheral safety that we want, at least over the last 15 days. Very solid numbers for Theodore. Alec Martinez, again, a player that they did acquire at the trade deadline. 2 Vegas Golden Knight defensemen today. I think it's an interesting dynamic, and I kind of went back and forth if I wanted to do this, but I think we should roll with it. He's really cheap, 4,400 on DraftKings and FanDuel respectively. He's 90th percentile blocks over the past year. So obviously he's someone that just got traded. I kind of wanted to see some of his longer term stats that he had provided. So that's a nice blocks number for someone where that is a very important thing. If he hits the block bonus tonight, you're nearly there at that price point. 75th percentile shots plus blocks. So yeah, the peripherals aren't amazing, but for this massive total, definitely think I want to have some exposure to both of these guys today, especially in tournaments. I think the interesting thing about this is you can really just correlate these by the other Vegas guys in your lineup. So these are the power play numbers on last slate that they were together, or the last game, I should say. And it was pretty even, split down the middle between these two units. So in particular, I'd be focusing on playing Martinez with my Carlson, Smith, those type of teams. I think that that's kind of a pretty easy tiebreaker. It depends on what other Vegas guys you have in your lineup. Say you're rolling out Pacioretty, Marchessault, Stone, those type of guys. Those would be my Theodore lineups. I think it's pretty simple. Just correlate with the power play. I think both of them are strong peripheral plays. I think there's a little bit of upside for both of them, but just be thoughtful on which teams you play these defensemen on. I doubt that I end up with both of them on the same team unless I really was stacking up Vegas in kind of an onslaught scenario. Let's talk about goalie a little bit. Just such a tough position to peg overall. If you get that win, you're usually in a decent position, but you need upside as well. We saw that last night. If you had the Dallas goaltender, you really kind of lapped the field at kind of a middling night at goalie overall. So Tristan Jarry is the guy that I'm focused on today. 7,800 on DraftKings. He's 8,900 on FanDuel. So a decent price discount there on DraftKings. So the difference is, so you get a $700 discount off of Francouz, whoever ends up being the starter for Colorado today. Make sure we're checking our starters. The Discord is a great resource for that. So it's interesting, right? Colorado, we want to target teams that are playing well, right? So Colorado 7-2-1 over the last 10. Pittsburgh's only 5-4-1 over their last 10, and they actually have lost 4 straight. So typically that would lead me away from Pittsburgh. There's a couple other data points that I liked when I kind of dug a little bit deeper on Jarry. Obviously the price discount there, but the LA Kings second highest Corsi for on the slate, so they're going to be throwing a lot of pucks on net. Pittsburgh, second highest Corsi against on the slate. So the ceiling in terms of shot attempts on Jarry today should be relatively large, especially on a small slate. And also, Pittsburgh does allow a below average amount of high danger percent chances against. So that's the thing. If you end up seeing a lot of shot attempts and they're just not from kind of the high danger scoring areas, maybe Tristan Jarry ends up racking up a ton of saves, gets you that 35 save bonus tonight. I think that Francouz certainly safer against Buffalo, but I also think that we're going to need ceiling today. It's a 3-game slate. I think Tristan Jarry might be my guy. If you want to learn even more about how to be a profitable DraftKings NHL player, make sure you hit that subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner if you haven't already, and come hang out with us in the Discord. A lot of great conversation going on, whether it's in DFS, betting, maybe a little bit of NHL 20. I will see you guys in there.